Good morning, and thank you for joining us for our newest Maplewood Monday, all on connected Markbooks. And we're going to be taking a look at today the features of Maplewood's Markbook program and how you can use it to record the marks and such for your individual classes and your various requirements. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a moment here at first to go over a bit of terminology that one needs to know in order to properly use Maplewood's Markbook. As always, the presentation will be available for download at the end of today's session. Our session today is going to focus on a cumulative Markbook, and cumulative or non-cumulative is something that is set up by the office. It's not something that the teacher controls. So if you're unsure which type of Markbook you've been set up for, you should check with the office and find out from them. So again, today we're looking at a cumulative Markbook in our example. There will be no audio interaction throughout this video session recording, but questions will be addressed at the end of the session. So as I say, before you begin, you should check with the office to find out whether or not you're using cumulative or non-cumulative Markbooks. And also, before teachers can put in marks and set up their Markbook, the school has to have set up the terms and topic assignment to the various classes or homerooms. In Ontario and Manitoba, the office can do that by using the topic-based Marks wizard, or they can do it by using select terms and select topics. If you're unsure if the office has done that step, again, you can check with them. But once they have done that step at the beginning of the school year, then generally the teachers are ready to go ahead and create their Markbook. What is a Markbook? A Markbook basically provides ways for teachers to record the marks that their students have received on various assessment and evaluations that they've held within the classroom. Maplewood's Markbook does allow for flexibility of a very customizable Markbook, in that you can have your Markbook, for instance, record the marks on a rubric scale out of a 4-point marking system, or it could be a percentage-based mark. You can also do your Markbook around your various outcomes on your report card. The Markbook, in essence, tracks the student's progress on those various evaluations that you've held within the class, and rather than having to put the mark in afterwards, and so that will print on the report card, the Markbook is calculating up the mark that is going to be printing on the report card. So a few things that we need to discuss before we begin and start looking at a Markbook design is Maplewood's terminology. So categories are what Maplewood calls the subsections of the reporting topics and subtopics as set up by the office. So the office sets up a topic, maybe the topic is something called grade. The categories then are a breakdown of how grade is going to be evaluated on a high level. So for example, if your report card, as I say, prints a grade or a numeric mark, then the Markbook is broken down into the different areas that you want to evaluate on. For instance, you might use knowledge, inquiry, communication, and application as your various categories. That's one way of setting up a Markbook. Underneath those categories, we have the various items, which further break down the categories that we just previously set up. So let's say, for instance, that I'm assessing knowledge, which was one of my previous categories. I can then set up 3 different tests or assignments and such, and these are my items under my category of knowledge. The denominator is the mark that the assessment was out of. So if I hold a test and it's out of 25 marks, I make my denominator the 25, and then I can just enter the raw scores. The weight is how much importance that particular item has in relation to the other items or categories within the Markbook design. So category weight, one to another, category to category, the weight is a ratio of one category's importance to another category. Whereas if the weight is on the item, it's that particular item's importance to the other items within the same category. And we'll take a look at that further when we look at the Markbook example. So we're going to switch now and create a Markbook. I'm going to start with showing you two different designs of a Markbook, and then we'll just take one of those and pursue it further and break it down. But to show you the flexibility of Maplewood's Markbook, I've switched over now and you should be seeing my screen. Here in this first screen, I happen to be in an elementary school. In this elementary school, the class Markbook that I have already set up is on a math class, for instance. And this math class, if you look at the topics assigned to this math class, I can see all the topics at once. I can look at there's an overall grade that is given for the math class. There's learning behaviors. And then there is the math marks themselves, which are outcomes based in that this math class has to receive a mark for knowledge and understanding, mental math and estimation, and problem solving. So not only do they receive an overall grade, but they receive 3 other individual grades for the outcomes themselves. Now in this case, if I look at the mathematics, I've got my mathematics mark, as you see from here. There is no calculated mark being put into the topic called mathematics because no mark is expected to be received for this topic within this report card design. However, the outcome, the knowledge and understanding, the student is expected to receive a rubric mark on a scale of 4. And if I scroll across, not only is there knowledge and understanding, there's mental math and estimation, and lastly, problem solving. So underneath each of those outcomes, I have created their own Markbook. So if we just look at knowledge and understanding for a moment, there's the Markbook that calculates out the mark for knowledge and understanding, which will print and the outcome on the report card. Under here, I've set up 4 categories: application, communication, inquiry and thinking, and knowledge. So if we look at this, I've got everything set up with a denominator of 4. So the first number being the denominator, I am marking on a 4 scale, and the weight is the importance of one item to another item or one category to another category. So this is just one example of how you can set up a Markbook. Another example of how you may set up a Markbook as opposed to marking on the rubric or a 4-point scale is here's a secondary school, and I'll go into this example of a class Markbook. And here, the mark that is printed on the report card is expected to be an overall mark. The Markbook itself is created underneath that high-level topic called grade. So in this case, the mark is calculated up, just like I had seen in my previous Markbook, but the Markbook was calculating up to the individual outcome, not the overall mathematics topic. So in this case, I'm marking on a percentage scale. I've made my categories denominators out of 100 rather than being out of the 4-point scale. Let's just take a look at this example and go through the definitions of categories and items. So if I was making up a category or needed to build my Markbook from the basis, I would choose my mark that is expected to be printed on the report card, and then when I click on that, I add a Markbook category. I've already set up 4 categories in this Markbook, but I can go in and I can add my Markbook category. You give the category a name, whatever it may be. It may be, let's say it's an exam, for instance. Final exam. When will it be held? So maybe it's going to be held in June, in this case, on the 18th. The denominator, I'm on a category. You can make the denominator 100 if you want it to show as a percentage mark, or I could say that it's at a 30, and that would be the denominator. Every school has flexibility to set up various letter grades. This school, I'm going to use the secondary grade, which has both numeric and a couple of letter grades in it. Whether or not you want to publish this item to the Markbook or not. Teachers have that flexibility on either categories or items. And then I would save this and go back. Once you have your categories created and set up, then you would start by adding your items. So here's my first category of knowledge. If I then add a Markbook item under here, I might call it Chapter 2 Text. And I choose which category do I want it to go under. In this case, it knew that I went in under knowledge, but I could, again, change it. Oops, I meant to click knowledge, not thinking. You say the date of when the test was held. Let's say I hold this test April 2nd. And how many marks is the test out of? So if you were marking on a rubric, you could make the denominator out of 4. If I was just marking it, and you have this flexibility, even though you're using the rubric scale system, you could still put your items in and how many marks is that out of. I'm going to hold off on explaining weight for a moment. I also have the ability to choose whether this item was a summative mark, a diagnostic mark, or a formative mark. A summative mark would mean that you wanted this to calculate up into the Markbook and count towards the overall grade. A formative mark would be something that you wanted to hold to see how the students were doing prior to starting maybe a unit. You want to see what the knowledge was before or after. So you've got diagnostic and formative that you can use as well to just show that you're assessing before or after you start the unit itself. And if it was set up as a diagnostic test, you'll see that it says how the weight should be reflective of that assessment. And whenever it's diagnostic or formative, you should set the weight to 0 so that it does not calculate up into the Markbook. So I'm going to go back and just leave this as summative for now. And I'll save and go back, and you'll see my Chapter 2 test is now added under the category of knowledge. So there it is there. So our categories and our items are important in the design of the Markbook, and also the denominator being how many marks it's out of, and the weight showing the ratio of how important that item is to an item, or how important that category is to the other categories. In this case, I'm using my weights as a scale, a ratio, and if I was to look at the design of this Markbook and didn't know anything about the teacher that had set this up, I can see that they used their own weighting scale in that 10 represents that every item is a value of 10, and because each of these items are all a weight of 10, they are all equally important to one another. If I do hold a test and I want that test to be worth more when using this sort of a scale system, maybe this test is twice as important as the other items, then I can change the category's weight, or pardon me, the item's weight to be twice that in terms of the ratio. So on a scale system of 10, 20, 30, now you'll see that this unit test is more important because I've weighted it at a higher value. It's twice as important as the Unit 1 assignment, for example. If I do badly on this test, then it's going to impact my overall mark on knowledge more, and thus my overall grade more. If I do poorly on this little unit test, even though it's out of 40 marks, it's not weighted as high as the test that is out of 25 marks. So you have that flexibility as a teacher to set up your Markbook and set the weights yourself. Another way you can weight the Markbook item, if I look at the communication category here for a moment, these individual quizzes and such that fall underneath this category are weighted the same as the value that they have been marked out of. So I am letting how many marks the particular assessment or evaluation tool was dictate its importance. When you set up a item in this manner, what you want to do is show how many marks it's out of as your denominator, and you can set the weight to be the same as the denominator, allowing how many marks it's out of to dictate its importance. So two possible ways of setting up a Markbook design. If we go back over and look at my previous Markbook where it was marked out of the rubrics, again, I've used the same sort of scale. So things are weighted by 10 if I so wanted them to be, or I could weight everything at 1, 2, 3, or 4. You can still use whatever number is meaningful to you. So it has that flexibility, and just use what works best for you and gives you the desired result in the calculation. So now that I have my individual items set up, I can go ahead and I can put my marks in. So in this case, the test chapter unit was out of 22, so I can go ahead. Whoops, my number was off. That's what it was. Let me just page up here a second. There we go. So if I want to put in that the student got 20, now I'm tabbing across in this case. Nope, down. I must have hit the arrow key. 18, 17, 15, and such. And as I tab across, it would have changed the calculation for the knowledge and, in essence, changed the calculation on the overall grade as it calculates up. So let's take a look at some of the other options after we've got our categories and our items set up and we've got our denominators and weights going the way we want. What are some of the other features of the Markbook that you can control and change the view on? So here on the Markbook, you have your settings wheel or your options. If you click on the Markbook options, you can change the layout itself. Let's say you wanted to see only items or only categories, then you can change your view accordingly. I'll just move this over out of the way. There we go. And here now I can see just at a high level my categories themselves, not seeing the individual items. So if I wanted to show a parent, well, this is where they were strong and this is where they were weak, you could do that. You can choose a variety of different options down here down the side. There's also the ability to show Markbook comments. That adds these little buttons beside each of the students' marks so that you can write in your own anecdotal comments. Another feature that you may like to play around with is the show the marking statistics. When you turn on the mark statistics, you'll see that the little graph buttons appear. Plus it added a row across the Markbook here for me. And I have selected the mean, the median, and the mode, and that's the three numbers within that row. If I wanted instead the standard deviation rather than the mode, I have to uncheck the mode and click the standard deviation. You can only have 3 statistics chosen at a time. You can also filter by your assessment, so you can look at, well, all of my formative rather than everything, or all of my summative rather than all of the various types that you may have set up in your Markbook. You can also filter on various items as well. So let's say I wanted to look at just my Unit 1, whatever, be it an assignment, a test, then I can say show me any of my categories, but show me Unit Unit 1 anything. So you could use the star wildcard to show that, and now I have filtered down my Markbook and I'm seeing just my items that started with the characters unit space 1. I'll let you explore the various other options on your own. Here within the Markbook, a couple of things I want to take a look at now that I've added in the Markbook comment. You can see that a Markbook comment has been added for this student. If I click on the little symbol, I can see the comment that was written there. So just attach to the Markbook comment, very simple. If I want to add a comment, you simply click on the green icon and it's empty, so I can write my comment in. These are anecdotal comments that you can use for your own purposes. They will print out when we look at the achievement reports and the individual student Markbook next. If you want to look at the graphics options, this is statistical graphing information. If I wanted to show how the students did on the Unit 1 assignment, I could click on the graph for that item and see how each student did. And if you hover over the bar, you can see the mark itself. And it also shows you the mean value, the median, and my denominator for what that item was out of. If you click on a student themselves, then you'll see how the student did on the various categories across your Markbook. And you can choose and filter on various options, and I'll let you explore that on your own as well. You can also graph the grade itself, so how the students are doing overall. And you can also print what is available on the screen. So if you wanted to print just the Unit 1 work within all of the categories as shown here, I could now do a print, and this would then create a print preview for me. Oh, my print preview is not working today, pardon me. That's just because Adobe is not installed on my machine. But what you get is a printout that looks exactly like what this screen has on it at this moment. So by filtering or changing your topic selection, you can change what is visible on the screen and control the print in that manner. One nice thing about the Markbook that has been an update this year is that as you move from cell to cell and you go to another field, you don't have to click save anymore or save and go back. It's automatically saved as soon as you leave that cell. So when you're done working on this class, you can change and go to another one of your classes, or you can simply be done and exit the Markbook. So let's take a look for a second now at, instead of viewing the class Markbook option, let's view the individual student Markbook and see how the view is a little bit different. So here, what we've got is our class that I can choose, and then once I choose a class, I'll see the students within that class. Do watch your terms and topics. The office controls the terms that are displayed in that they are the ones who are locking and unlocking the terms as the year goes and advances. And if you only want to see the learning skills, you could choose just the topic of learning skills, see the learning skills here, just like we did in the class Markbook, or you could see everything, showing all of your terms and topics. Not only can you create categories and items in the class Markbook screen, but you can also create categories and items when you're in the individual Markbook screen. So you could add a category, you can add an item, or change or edit the item or category simply by clicking on the link for it. Do know that if you click on and make changes in the individual's Markbook, you are changing your definition for your Markbook for the class. So keep that in mind as you make changes. You're not just impacting that individual student, you're impacting the definition of your Markbook as a whole. My Markbook comments are still on. You still have your gear wheel here that you can choose various options. So my Markbook comments are on, and I'll close that. I can see the comments that were written before. You can print this screen as well. Again, it prints out exactly what you see on the screen. If you wanted to collapse or expand individual categories, you can click on the plus or minus sign beside the category name to expand that or hide it. And you can enter your values here just like we did on the others. So my letterbox is showing up. That's another option within the settings, whether or not I want to display the letter grade box. That's entirely up to you. And I can enter my values as well, as I said. So this test, it's hidden for me right now, was out of 25, so I can put in a value. If you do put in a value that is over, it will tell you that it is invalid. And I can leave it, as I did here. Maybe they got a bonus mark, or I can go back and change my values. To write a comment, the same as we saw before, you just click on the little icon button beside that item's mark, and you can enter in your Markbook comment. Lastly, before we leave the session today, let's take a look at the Achievement Reports feature from the Achievement menu. When you're in the achievement report, this is a handy way to also print your class Markbook. We saw that we could use the print button on the class itself or the individual student's Markbook. But if you wanted to print out the Markbook, depending on whether your Markbook was set up on a homeroom or class, most Markbooks are set up on a class, but there's still an option to have it on a homeroom, so you can toggle between that. Select your applicable class. You can select a range of classes if you desire. You can choose to put one per student per page, or you can include the weights, denominators, final term. Some of the ones I tend to use are definitely including the weight and the denominator. Including the final term is entirely up to you. I like to include the date of when that evaluation was held. The assessment type, if you want to show that it's formative or summative. The percent of to the total mark is very handy as well, and show the mark as a percentage value. Make sure that you do a Markbook summary. A class summary, I'll just print the overall marks, just like much of what you would see if you were looking at what was going to be produced on the report card. You can choose your term and the topic around which that your Markbook is built. So if we go back and were to look at the elementary one, for instance, you'd want to print your Markbook summary on the, I'm not timed out yet. If I was here, I would print my Markbook summary. Same option as in that. It's just that you'll want to print it under the outcome underneath that math class. So here it would be this math class. I can choose what I want to include. I would do a Markbook summary. I could do my overall grade, but my Markbook was actually set up under knowledge and understanding that I showed you earlier. So then I'll view that, and this would show me my Markbook. Now it's not defined in this case because I picked the wrong term. Actually, I believe I picked the wrong class. It was Math 8 that I had set my Markbook up in. So that's how it would look if you were in the elementary one. If I'm in the secondary one, let's just view it here. And there is my Markbook. I'll just expand this for a second. Whoops, put on the right button. There we go. Move that out of the way. And that makes it a little easier for you to read. So some of the things I included were the date, the percentage total of the overall mark, and then the percent final term mark itself. And then you could send that off to the printer. This is just open in its own window, so you can close that and go back. Feel free to play around with those various print options. If you do want to see one student per page, maybe you want to hand these out to the students, you can include the class average or not, include the comment. This will include the grade comment and the overall, or those anecdotal comments. Let's just take a look at what that printout would look like for a moment. So here is my individual student and how they did, the percent of the total column, because I had that on from before. And there is the anecdotal comments that we saw, as well as if you put in the overall comment or the report card comment that would tie in with your mark. And I'll go back and show you how you could do that in the Markbook as well. So that was under achievement reports. Let's go back and look under an individual Markbook for a moment. One last thing I just want to point out is that if you have a Markbook comment showing, these are individual anecdotal comments that are beside each of the categories and items. But if you're at the high level, the grade that is going to be printed out on the report card, if you go into that comment, this will be the comment that is printed out on the actual report card. And you could edit it from within the individual Markbook or using the other tools that are available for you for comment entry. Lastly, another item I want to point out is do watch your from and to dates. This is your range of the dates that you are showing with your Markbook. So of course, I don't want to be back as far as February 2011, but you could go ahead to the current date. and my Markbook was set up on February 1st. If I want to narrow down my item, I could say, well, just show me those that were held this particular 2-week range. And this changes my view because it looks at the dates of the categories and items themselves. So I have a little less showing. So not only can you use the filters to control what you're seeing on the screen, but you can also use the from and to dates to control seeing only a week at a time or a month at a time, or the entire semester's Markbook. So that concludes our session today. The session will be posted up on our website and can be viewed at any time. And I thank you for joining us today for the presentation. I'm just going to go back to my slides and let's take a look at our PowerPoint presentation and just do a quick recap before we finish up. So here we talked about how to create a Markbook, how you go in and select your appropriate class, the term, and the topic. And as we saw at the end, just watch the date range. So when you're adding categories to your Markbook, you simply click on the topic that you want to build your Markbook around, be it an outcome or be it an overall grade. When you are adding the categories, the denominator stands for the amount of marks that the category is being representative of, whether it be a 4 scale or a percentage scale, and how the weights work as a ratio between categories or between items. You've got your Markbook adding items, so once you set up your category, you can click on the category and choose to create and add Markbook items under that category. Know that you can always go back and edit your categories or items and change the denominators, weights, dates, whatever is applicable. You may even change the assessment type from summative to rather be formative or diagnostic. So item weights and categories, as we talked about before, show the ratio of one item to another item or of the category to another category. If you don't want this item or category to count in the overall calculation, be sure to set the weight to 0. The different assessment types, we alluded to that when we set up the Markbook. So summative is the default, and you use this whenever you want the marks to calculate up into the overall mark. Diagnostic to help you identify the student's current knowledge of the subject, and formative to help you as a teacher see how the assessments that you held, how the student is learning while the learning is taking place. We've got our copying categories and items. Oh, we didn't show that. I'm sorry. I'll take a look and show you how to copy categories and items. And another feature I just realized I forgot to show you is how you can include and exclude students. So I'll go back and show you how to do that as well. So you can copy the categories or items across within the same Markbook, or you can copy a Markbook from one class to another class. The other thing I'll go back and show you is how you can include and exclude students from this evaluation by using the little checkbox there at the top. We looked at the Markbook options, and I'll give you a chance to explore those various options on your own. So we saw and we took a look at the Markbook statistics and the Markbook comments, and how you can do a quick print by going in and clicking on the printer icon itself. Do remember that these prints on the class Markbook or individual Markbook can be narrowed down to show what's on the screen by using the filters and or date ranges. When you do print, you're printing what exactly is shown on the screen. If you want to print the entire Markbook, it's best to use the feature in the achievement reports and print your Markbook from there. Let's go back over and take a look at, for a second, the area that I forgot to show you, which was copying items and categories across within your Markbook. So just go into this class Markbook for a second. You can do it from individual Markbook as well. So within here, it tells me as well, it reminds me that I had filters on, so I'm not seeing my whole Markbook as a whole, so that's important. And I can see that there's filters on the category and filters on the item. If I want to change that, then I just have to take that out within my settings. And now I'll see everything. So copying a category or copying an item, when you go in and you edit that item or category, you'll see up at the top that there's a copy button. If you copy, you can choose to copy to another one of your classes. So I could copy this particular item to another class. So I'll choose my class, for instance. I will then choose the topic, such as grade, and I'll choose the category. So I was in knowledge. I'll copy this to another class, the knowledge category, and then I simply say copy, and it's been successfully copied. Not only can I copy from one class to another, I can go in and copy this within the same class that I'm in right now, and rather copy it to grade and put this Unit 1 assignment into the category called application. And now it's been successfully copied across. If we take a look, we'll see that Unit 1 assignment not only exists in knowledge, so there's Unit 1 assignment, but if I scroll across to application, there's Unit 1 assignment in application. I could go in and change the denominator and weights if it was different for this category, and now I can enter how the student did crossing over the categories, because a particular test or assessment may actually be marking on or assessing the knowledge of both the application and the knowledge criteria. Lastly, the other thing you can do is you can include or exclude students from a various assessment. So here you can see that Lease to Forget has been excluded from the Unit 2 assignment, and how I did that was I went in and edited that item, and rather than saying include the Markbook for all students, I uncheck that box and I can pick and choose who I want to include. These students already have marks entered, so they are by default included, and I can exclude Lisa. When I'm done, I just save and go back, and rather than leaving that student blank, we see that they have a not applicable in their cell beside their name, because they are excluded from writing this particular assignment. So that's how you can also include and exclude students from your various items and categories. So back to our slide. We looked at individual Markbooks as well as class Markbooks, and the flexibility that that offers, in that I can do and enter the marks student by student. I can collapse and grow my Markbook by clicking on the plus and add button to the side. I can filter by my date range, just like I was able to in the class Markbook. I can also still add items and change items within this view, but know that you're changing them for all students in the class, not just that particular student that you have to be looking at this time. Within the achievement reports, back from the achievement menu, you can print your individual students' Markbooks, or you can print the class Markbook. And there's an example of a view of what the Markbook printout would look like. So that concludes our session today. And for more information, do be sure to check out the manuals through the Connect Ed page. You can always, when you're logged in as the teacher, you see that there's a help link up there at the top with the little yellow star. So go down to Chapter 4, which shows the achievement chapter, and you can look at examples of how to set up cumulative Markbooks, individual Markbooks, and the achievement reports option. So thank you for joining us today, and stay tuned for our next Maplewood Monday a week from now. Thank you.